So compared to this great power, Elijah was alone. Yet he denied himself. He did not worry about himself. He did not think about what people thought about him. If he had the slightest bit of trying to save his life, he would not be able to do this work. But he completely denied himself. And when he went out Mount Carmel, in front of all the enemies, he truly denied himself. So, the last Elijah must not have any self, prestige, and look for their fame and honor and glory, and worry about sacrificing themselves. Fourth, Elijah simply obeyed 100% God's commands. He obeyed everything God told him to do. 1 Kings chapter 17 verse 1. And Elijah the Tishbite of the inhabitants of Gilead said to Ahab, and Elijah the Tishbite of the inhabitants of Gilead, he was sent to King Ahab. If you keep on following the demon like this, then the rain of blessings, blessing of rain, will not fall, and the country and the church will become ruined. Think about Elijah, who was told to go and say this to King Ahab. He would have to die. In the time of Elijah, Elijah was not the only prophet. There were many other prophets. But instead, and they did go in to Ahab, but they all died. They were all killed by Ahab. And so God said, now it's your turn, Elijah. Will you go tell the leader of my people to wake up? It's also meaning it's your turn to go in and die. Elijah knew that if he went in, he would not be able to come out alive. And yet he still chose to do it. Did Elijah truly obey God's command 100%? If anything, Elijah waited for God to give him that command. We must know that God sends the greatest prophet in the most dangerous time. If Elijah was to die, then God has no one else to use. And that would be the end of God's work. So God protected him so that he would not die, and he brought him out. There's all these security guards, and yet our Father allowed him to go in and out without being caught. It was as if he went into hell. And to his son who did that, Elijah said, oh, that's good. Go back home and rest. He should have said that, but instead, he sent Elijah to the brook Cherith, where there's nothing there. It's like a desert. Go over there and wait. So Elijah, who obeyed, did he ask, is there room for me? Is there someone who will take care of me? What is there to eat? Instead of asking, he said, yes, okay, I will. And he went to the brook Cherith. And of course, there was nothing there. There was a small brook. And he was probably sitting on a rock, waiting. But he was happy because of the joy of obeying God. And even though there was nothing there, he was happy and he was thankful. And when time came for him to eat, these crows came and danced to him and fed him. Who fed him? These crows came to him with bread and prepared a table for him on a rock. Who knows how they prepared the table, but they prepared the table well for him. And he ate that. And Elijah was very happy. All throughout history, the man of God had no friends. And even his family can't understand him. They are because who will know the secret between God and his selected and his chosen one? People always look with eyes of question and eyes of doubt. But these crows loved this man of God with a single heart. So it was happier to Elijah to be with the crows than to even be with his own family. Wherever God leads us, I hope that you will obey. Whether there's no home or nothing to eat, regardless of what changes, you must know that is the happiest way for you, and that is the way for immortal life. So, King Ahab did not know how to repent. So, all the blessings were taken away. And soon, the brook Cherith also stopped flowing water. He has nothing to eat or drink. So God said to Elijah, Elijah, go back home. No, but he didn't say that. He said, will you get up and go to the Gentile land and go live. Go to Zarephath and live with a widow. God is telling him to live among the Gentiles who did not even have the same religion. You know, people were making fun of him anyway. You know, even in this world, even among a family, if we meet each other after a long while, we say, oh, hi, how are you? How have you been? And after that, there's not much to talk about. Why? Because we haven't met in such a long time. The way we eat, the way our lifestyles are different too. But God is telling Elijah to go to the Gentile country, and live with a widow. And why? Why a widow's house? There's so many other houses there. But Elijah only said yes. He was always yes. 100% yes. So he went to Zarephath. There are probably many widows. How does he know if it's a rich widow, a poor widow, old widow, or young widow? He doesn't even know the name, and he just went to Zarephath to look for a widow. You know, he didn't even ask God what what her name is, and he just went. So he arrived in Zarephath, and there was once a young woman picking wood. And in the eyes of the man of God, that was her. He came to her, excuse me. And so this woman stood up from picking wood. Can you give me a cup of water? It had not rained for many years. And in order to get water, we do not know how far she walked. Perhaps even for many days, she probably had to wait in line for water. You know, here in Korea, it's like a paradise. The rain falls when the time comes, and we have lots of water. But Israel, it's like a desert. People think that Israel is a very nice nation, but go there. It's like a wilderness and desert. It's not a very good place for people to live. And it's been like that for generations. If you look in the Bible, you see that they always fight over wells. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, they always fought over wells. Here in Korea, you need a lot of money to be considered rich. But in Israel, you need a lot of wells to become rich. Why? Because there's such a lack of water. Here in our country, we have rain which falls all at the right time, at the right season. And Korean people use so much water. There's some people, when they wash their face, they use 10 basins of water. They do not even know what a great blessing this is. But in a country like Israel, there's always a lack of water. Sometimes, when there's a lack of water, they take one basin of water, and the grandmother and grandfather start by washing, and then it goes down the line. And by the end of the line, by the last person, it's like muddy water. Here in Korea, they're worried about having a flood. But Israel, they want a flood. They want a lot of water. Why? Because they collect that rainwater and they use that. So even in this kind of Korea, Nowadays, they say that it's like a drought. It's very dry. And in the city, they're starting to conserve water. Even in our country here, we have a lot of water. But if we don't have water for a couple months, it starts to go into emergency. But here in the time of Elijah, we do not know how long that there was a drought. And we don't know what this woman went through to get water. And all of a sudden, a strange man comes asking for water. Nowadays, even though there's lots of water, people ask for a cup of water and they reject them. But see, this young widow, she had a conscience, and the Holy Spirit moved in her conscience. And she said, okay, I'll give you a cup of water. And she gave him a cup of water. He drank it all. And she thought he would leave. He asked for something to eat. There must be something to eat. She was very poor. In that time of drought and famine, she said, I promise you, but I lost my husband a long time ago, and I have one small child. We have enough flour and oil to make one more loaf of bread. In the time of drought and famine, there comes a time when you can't eat every single meal. And if you go to the market, there's nothing to buy. And there's nothing to sell. So whatever you have, that's it. And once whatever you have is gone, then you have to die. So when a family starts to run out of food, they say, okay, let's skip one meal. Let's skip 2 meals. Then after a while, they say, let's eat 1 meal a day. And after a while, they'll starve and wait until they can't wait any longer. And then they'll eat their last meal. And then they're just going to wait to die. This is what it's like when there's a famine and a drought. This widow Zarephath, we do not know how long she starved. They only had 1 meal left. I'm sure her young son was crying out to her because he's so hungry. So she left enough to make 1 loaf of bread, and they would eat that bread and they would die. But a certain man comes and says, give that bread to me. If you give me that bread, the God I serve will feed you. She does not even believe in God. Do you think she would believe his words? But here we can see this is the greatest test to that widow. What if those Christians in the world had this test? Do you think they would pass this test? But this woman, though she did not know God, yet in her conscience, God was alive. And she passed the test. She said, okay. She made the bread and gave it to him. That was not just bread, but that was their life. In other words, they gave to God's Son their whole lives. And afterwards, what happened? From then on, the oil and flour, they never ran out of oil and flour or water. And God fed them. I hope that you will accept the Son of God into your family. Then you will truly be blessed. Nowadays, there are so many fake servants of the Lord. And that's why people lose a lot. And they lose their blessings instead of receive blessings. So by this young widow and this man start to live together. How long? For 3.5 years. For a long time. For more than 3 years, they lived together. You can imagine how much they became attached to one another. Though I'm sure that even if that widow's husband was alive, he would not be able to take care of her as well as Elijah did. He would get water. He would make the fire. And even if that young boy's father was alive, perhaps that father would not have been able to love that boy as Elijah did. Because Elijah had the love of God. He washed him, cleaned him, bathed him, carried him around, educated him. And of course, because he taught him God's words. You can imagine what that son was like. So there's blessings in all kinds of ways. A widow which only had one more meal to eat, they had flour and oil to use. So all of a sudden, her home has become like heaven. But when other people look at it, it's very horrendous. What? He calls himself the Son of God, a servant of God, and what is he doing? He's living with a Gentile woman, and even at that, a widow. How can he be a man of God? Then why did God have Elijah do this? Why did God make his holy son live at the house of a widow and be misunderstood? And for such a long time at that. Sometimes God seems so mischievous. Who believes that he is the man of God because he's living with a widow, a Gentile widow? But not only that, God was mischievous all throughout history. Look at Hosea. He was such an obedient son, and yet he had to marry a prostitute. So you can imagine what Hosea went through. And look at Jesus. Why did he have Jesus be born from the second wife of a man? Or how about Noah? He made Noah build an ark on top of the mountain. He should build an ark by the river or by this ocean. But why on top of the mountain? True faith is believing when we can't believe Him. If we can believe, if all the conditions are there to believe, and we believe, that is not true faith. True patience is when we are patient, when we can't be patient. Anyone can be patient when it's easy to be patient. And true love is loving when you can't love. People who treat you well, it's easy to love them. Even Gentiles in the world can love people who treat them well. When we're hungry and poor and sick, and then will you still love God then? That is truly loving God. When God feeds you, clothes you, and makes you rich, and you love God, anyone can do that. Long time ago, some man's grandson died. He believed in Jesus, and he went to church, but all of a sudden, he gave up God. He gave up church, and he started to dance. If God was alive, why did He allow my grandson to die? I'm not going to believe in God. That's why when things go well, and he's rich, and he's not sick, he will obey God, and he will worship God. But he's saying God killed his loving grandson. That's not serving God. Loving God, when it's difficult to love Him, is true love. And believing in Him when it's difficult to believe, that is true faith. Then why? Why did God have such a wonderful son live in the house of a widow? He allowed this in order to give a very important lesson to his last children, to his last Elijahs. That's why He made Elijah live like that. Then what is it that He's trying to teach us here? If Elijah while living with the widow, sinned, then do you think God would use Elijah anymore? He would have never used him. But because Elijah was holy and lived a sinless life, God used him. And one time when Elijah made a mistake and ran away from God, God did not use him again. He made someone else a prophet. So Elijah, who obeyed God so well, Moses, who obeyed God all the way to the end, and when he disobeyed God once, he was not allowed to go to the promised land. But look at Elijah. While living for 3.5 years with that widow, if he had committed any sin, do you think God would have used him? I hope you will not misunderstand God. Then, after 3.5 years, our Heavenly Father glorified him more, placed him on the Mount Carmel, and glorified him to save all the people. Then as we see God using Elijah, we know that we can know what a holy life he lived while living with that widow. This is a most important lesson that God wants to give to these last people. Here is the key point.